I'd like to call the Tuesday, August 21st, 2018 Papillion City Council meeting to order. Mrs. Brown, would you please take the roll?
Florence. Here. Mumgard. Here. Gaines. Here. Glover. Here. Jaworski. Here. Klug. Here. Stubbe. Here. Ingberg.
Got a couple of scouts with us tonight. I'd like to invite them up to lead us in the pledge. If you gentlemen want to come up front. Thank you very much. I forgot to ask him, Miss Klug, what troop are they from?
461 and 463.
Thanks for coming out. Current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the council chambers. We got one special presentation tonight, Mr. Rainbolt, Sarpy County Economic Development, to give us a second quarter update.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm Andrew Rainbold, Executive Director of Sarpy County Economic Development Corporation. Thanks very much for having me tonight. And this is our report covering the second quarter of 2018, and we'll talk a little bit about just the first half of the year in general. I'll start off on my handout here on the economic indicators that we track across the county. And starting with, if you can read that on the overhead, but starting out with building permit valuations, having another great year. If I remember, last year was by far our record year for us, thanks in large part to Facebook coming in and getting their building permit here in Papillion, and they did it again in the second quarter of this year too. So you can see, obviously, Papillion is way out in front of other communities, including the county. In total, we're a little bit behind last year. If you look at it, I believe their permit valuation, they're building this year are a little bit smaller than what they did last year, mostly due to the configuration of their site and some wetlands on there. So their building permit was proportionally smaller as well, and that's pretty much the difference there, I believe, in this quarter, second quarter of 2018 compared to the second quarter of 2017. All in all, we're behind a little bit from last year. But last year we did have a tremendous start to the year. This year, I'm not sure that we're going to surpass the record that we set last year. But again, that was far and away our best year that we've ever had, and this year will be the second best year that we ever had at least. So I can tell you that. Skipping down to single-family housing subdivisions platted, we had 458 two large subdivisions here in Papillion and another large one in Gretna that were platted in the second quarter. For the year, we are a little bit ahead of where we were last year. We had 515 in the first half of 2018 compared to 466 at this time last year. Again, we had another great year for housing for plats last year for housing subdivisions across the county. We did have a whole bunch come in at the very end of the year, so we may also not surpass that our record. Or not, I guess it wasn't a record last year, but we may not surpass what we did last year. But it doesn't mean we're not having a great year so far. On single-family housing permits issued, you can see that we are almost exactly where we were last year. We're about 20 ahead there, 275 this year, 256 last year. So then that's just for the second quarter. For the year to date on single-family housing permits, we're at 515 for this year and 466 for last year. And I'm sorry, on the subdivisions platted, we are actually a little bit behind at this point, 812 this year as compared to 895 last year. And again, we had a whole bunch come in at the end of the year last year too. On the labor force statistics, I'm sorry, I'm skipping one there, multifamily housing permits. Second quarter of this year, we had 227 as compared to 240. The large project there at the city center in La Vista driving all of our units in this quarter. As far as labor force statistics, a number that we follow closely, It's kind of good news, bad news. Bad news is that we're still at a kind of an unhealthy low level of unemployment, and it's causing trouble for our current employers to find help. The good news is we've seen some fairly substantial growth in our labor force over the last year, up from about 92,000 last year to about 94,500 this year. So that's a pretty healthy growth, probably reflective of all the housing development that we've been seeing going on. Moving quickly to our goal sheet at Sarpy County EDC. This is how we track our efforts. You can start with the most important one, the landed projects. And we did land one project in the second quarter of 2018. We've got 5 projects landed for the year with a total capital investment of over $1.2 billion. Thanks largely, again, to our friends at Facebook. Total year-to-date, total jobs with those projects is 245. 220 of those are new jobs, and 55 are retained jobs. And we've got a few other projects that we expect to close in the second half of this year that will add to those numbers. So with that, we do have a pretty healthy project pipeline. Moving to our second level there. We've opened 22 opportunities year-to-date. Just 8 of those in the second quarter. Usually the second quarter is one of our busier quarters as people kind of get going with the year and try to get things moving before it gets too late. But actually this was a little bit of a slow quarter for us. You can see of those, 17 of the 22 projects are new to market, meaning they have no physical location in Sarpy County to date. 5 of those projects already have some kind of location here in Sarpy County and looking to expand. The types of projects that we've been working on are fairly typical for us, although we have seen a little dip in distribution projects. The last few years we've been seeing a whole lot of those. We've seen 3 year-to-date in the office service projects, which also include data centers, has been pretty healthy at 6. And on the manufacturing side, which is ones we're always going after, we've seen a healthy 6 projects there as well. The bottom level there is a new kind of, it's a metric we've always followed, but we haven't really reported on, and I'd kind of like to tell a little our story on there too, is the business interaction. So how are we interacting with businesses? And these are both businesses that are already here and businesses that could be new to Sarpy County. First level one there is our business retention and expansion. And so those are proactive calls that we make on existing businesses here in the county. Some of kind of asking them what are their opportunities, what are their threats and challenges, and how can we help? One is our goals are to make sure they stay here, and 2 is to make sure they can grow here. And mostly what we're hearing from them, as I mentioned before, is workforce issues. And so we've done about 18 of those visits so far this year. We brought on in January Josh Sharvat, who that's one of his main focuses is making these proactive calls. So we'll continue to ramp that up. And the second quarter was really when we got it going, and he's continued to do a great job at that. Business assistances are times that we talk to businesses and help them out in some way, but it's not really a project that includes new jobs or new investment. Year to date, we've done 12 of those, and business interactions are other times where we've just in one way or another had a meeting or met with a company, and maybe there wasn't anything that came out of it, but it's more relationship building, so we wanted to make sure we're measuring those as well. And obviously we have a lot more of those than we do projects, so you've got to have a lot of the interactions to start getting those projects. We've had 35 so far this year. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Mr. Mumgard.
Yeah, I'm looking at your Sarpy County labor force statistics, and then in conjunction with the businesses. Okay, you give us the number for 94,000, just short of 94,500.
Sure.
As I take it, that's the number of people in Sarpy County who are in the labor market.
Correct. Yes.
Is there anything here that tells us what percentage or what rate of those people are employed in Sarpy County? We could probably figure that out. I believe there's the census has
a software called On the Map, where you can kind of figure out your labor flow of how many people live in the county and either work inside or outside of the county. So that's one way to measure that I know of, but that is not
It's
reflected
not.
in these numbers.
Okay.
I don't believe.
Do you know if the Sarpy County EDC actually keeps that number, or would that be something what we would have to ask you to calculate?
We could probably figure that out, but we don't track it on a regular basis. But so you're talking about total
Yeah.
total number of workers inside in this county
Yeah. It's
that
you
or
know, it's
jobs.
inter-
I guess jobs in the county. is
Sure,
what
it's
we're looking for.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting to see that there's 94,457 people who are in the labor force in the Sarpy County. But if 80% of them leave the county every day and go work someplace else, it has a lessened impact on the county and the economy in the county and the economy in Papillion than if they actually just get in their car and drive a mile and work in Sarpy County.
You could argue that they are going out and bringing money into the county from their jobs outside of the county.
Yeah, you could. And then moving to your business sheet.
Sure.
Does that distinguish retail jobs as opposed to non-retail?
These are all non-retail jobs. Yeah,
Oh.
we don't work. The Sarpy County Chamber kind of works most of those retail projects. So if a retail user called us, we would refer them to the Sarpy Chamber, and if needed, we would help in any way we can. But that's not really we're going after primary employers, so folks who provide services or create goods that are sold outside of our market area.
Okay, now, I mean, I don't want to be too parochial. It's not a big deal if somebody lives in Papillion and then works, in Gretna or Bellevue. But we had a project not too long ago in which it was a combination of retail and office. And I expressed the view that, I wanted us to have policies that encouraged more non-retail jobs, and I didn't think that project was really doing the best job of it. Okay, do you have numbers that would tell me whether I'm right or wrong, or what kind of policies we should follow to achieve that goal if we wanted it?
Not offhand, although I think that's a very interesting way to approach it. I would be happy to try to figure that out. And you're looking at more true mixed use. Is that what I hear you saying, or?
Well, I see the credit union's big office building. I think, that's the kind of jobs that I think that we should have policies that promote.
Okay.
Whether we're doing a good or bad job of that, I guess, is the question that I'm asking. And I'm not asking you to come up with that right away, but I think that should continue to be an issue in the future, particularly when we have commercial developments come in to see what kind of development it is. Is it more stores, which is good? People have to shop here too. Or is it some other kind of job, an office type job, something like that? So I might be asking those questions of you in the future. Thank you.
Well, what I can tell you is that all of our numbers are either office, industrial, or a data center, if you want to quantify that as separate, because we've seen several of those recently. But all of our jobs that we're going after are of that nature. So
I commend you. I think that's a good goal, because it seems to me that retail will follow the crowd.
Exactly.
You get the big guy. You get the big office building with 1,000 people in it, and you'll have shops nearby.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily work the other way around.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Rainbow, just 1 minute. We got a number of people in the audience, students, business people, residents. Can you give a real quick overview on the structure of EDC and the relationship between us and the city?
Certainly. So the Sarpy County Economic Development Corporation was founded back in the 70s, I believe. And in 1991, they joined up with the Greater Omaha Chamber to help form the Greater Omaha Economic Development Partnership. We are now a 6-county, 2-state economic development partnership that goes after exactly what we were just talking about, primary jobs that are in our targeted areas. And so we spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly who we could compete for and where we can put them. Locally, a lot of what we do is try to create those sites where those projects can at least this is what we're working on right now a lot, because we're pretty short on sites. And so we spend a lot of time trying to prepare the sites for the types of jobs and employers that we can find. The city is a great supporter of us, as is all cities in Sarpy County, as well as the county itself. And 50% of our budget comes from public sources, and the other 50% of it comes from private investors, predominantly engineers, architects, construction companies, finance institutions. So we think we do a pretty good job of leveraging funds to go after and land those projects. Personally, although I grew up in Papillion and La Vista, we are pretty agnostic as to where exactly those sites are. So we want to make sure that we land the project and look at those jobs in Sarpy County. So it's kind of up to the cities themselves to help work with us to help prepare those sites, and we really enjoy working with Papillion to do that.
Thanks for the partnership.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
We do.
And Ms. Myers, Administrator's Report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to alert the council of some key dates, if they could make note. Otherwise, we'll be also sending you out a notice. But the audit committee is scheduled to meet on September 4th before the city council meeting. If you don't recall, if you're on the audit committee, it's council members Jaworski, Mumgard, Florence, and Gaines. And Nancy will be talking to you about the upcoming audit and the proposed sales tax rebate reserve policy. Also, the F&A committee will be meeting on September 18th before the city council meeting, and that includes council members Ingberg, Florence, Glover, and Mumgard. And Lori and I will be presenting the proposed fees for the Papillion Landing Community Center, and then an operational reserve policy, as well as a sales tax rebate debt service policy also. Additionally, the annual league meeting or conference is September 19th through the 21st in Kearney. I'll send out the conference schedule in case you'd like to attend, but if you would, please let Allie know and she'll make reservations for you and get you registered. I attended the first meeting with the League of Nebraska Municipalities regarding proposed legislation for the upcoming session. Our main focus was really on the collection of the online sales tax. We expect that there'll be some additional legislation to address that issue. If you have any issues you'd like me to look into, etc., otherwise I'll keep you posted on new developments. It's really early in the process so far. The Sarpy County Sewer Agency will be meeting on September 5th. At that point, we expect some determinations made on where the first phase of those sewer improvements will be located. Again, I will be sending you information as that continues to progress as well. And lastly, the Papillion Landing Fieldhouse and Community Center. Mayor Black and I took a tour along with a few other city employees. I know each of you toured previously, but the good news, it's on target, it's scheduled, it's on its schedule, as well as on budget, so those are two very important things. And we had Trent from the communications department create a video regarding Papillion Landing to try and generate some additional interest. And in closing, I'm going to ask Taylor to start that video. Thank you.
Just briefly, since it is quiet, this is actually up on our YouTube channel. It's got sound behind it and some conversation, so if you want to watch it afterwards as well, you get the background sound. I think one of the messages out of that is because of the scale of it and everything that's in there, it really does give us a chance to rethink almost how we do everything. So that idea of what if and the idea of reimagining, so that's a lot of what Lori and her staff are doing. So thanks for everything you're doing. Next is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Councilman Glover. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item D1, Ordinance 1818, an ordinance to approve a change of zone for the property legally described as lots 236, 237, and 238, Terra Heights, a subdivision in Sarpy County, Nebraska, and tax lot A1B1C, located in the southwest quarter of Section 23, Township 14, North Range 12 east of the 6 p.m., Sarpy County, Nebraska, generally located northeast on the intersection of North Washington Street and Hogan Drive, as follows. Lot 2, Terra Heights Replat 1 from both CC Community Commercial and R4 Multiple Family Residential to R4 Multiple Family Residential only. The applicant is the Lund Company, Tanya Shapiro, Terra Heights Replat 1. Is there a council member that will introduce? Introduced by Councilman Glover. Item D2, Ordinance 1819, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of General Obligation Improvement Bonds Series 2018 in the principal amount not to exceed $1,700,000 to pay the cost of certain improvements within Street Improvement and Paving District Number 1701. Is there a council member that will introduce? Introduced by Councilman Florence. As is typical with all bond issues, staff is recommending a waiver of the second and third readings. This does require a supermajority of vote of the council. It's not the only time we waive, but it's about the only time we waive those. And the logic is the sooner we can get to market to issue those bonds, the sooner we can lock in the interest rate. If we follow the normal process of second and third readings, we won't go to market for probably 4 to 5 weeks, and we're in a raising interest rate environment. So we want to mitigate that risk. So with that, is there a motion to waive the second and third readings for Ordinance 1819? Motion by Councilman Gaines, second by Councilman Jaworski. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote on the motion to waive. This does require a supermajority. Mr. Mumgard.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1819? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Ingberg. Any council discussion? Mr. Mumgard.
Yes, could Mr. Leffler come forward?
I would introduce for the record Bruce Leffler, Emeritus Investment Corp. Omaha.
Okay, this agenda is somewhat unique in that we have here an item to issue bonds.
Yes.
That is to take on more debt,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
But the last item on our agenda is a resolution to call bonds. Can you explain? I don't want to get out of order. What's the difference between the issuing of the bonds and the calling of the bonds?
Well, there are two. I'll start here. There's obviously two separate issues involved here. The current ordinance is authorizing the issuance of bonds to pay for the pedestrian overpass project that the city has worked on and had in place for some amount of time. The resolution that's going to call bonds are SID bonds, SID 217, that the district had, or that the city had annexed some time ago, and now is using cash on hand, quite frankly, to pay that debt down. So they're obviously separate actions on two separate items. Okay. The interesting thing, I think that you're going to try to get to is in using the cash to pay down those bonds, should the board or should the council proceed on item F6, the outstanding on that SID debt is like at a little over 5%, because it's a former sanitary improvement district that's outstanding. The bonds that will be issued anticipated under this particular project, we would anticipate they're going to be right at 3% plus or minus. So you are going to do a nice exchange of lower interest rate on the debt that you're undertaking for this particular project versus using city cash. And again, I know that the city has expressed interest in the past of using some cash to pay down debt, and this is one of the steps in that process.
Well, it's my understanding that that's why we accumulated the cash, so that we could pay down debt when it was advantageous to do that.
Correct.
Okay, so we have about $1.7 million in this bond issue, and just under $1 million that we're paying off.
Right.
I mean, in my household, it would be like, okay, if I go out and buy a car and get a car loan, but then I pay off a bunch of credit card debt,
There you go.
my total
Yeah.
outlay monthly hasn't changed. Is that the situation we're getting into?
Well, twofold here. Number one, the ordinance that's being considered right now is to authorize the issuance of 1.7 million for the overpass project. Now, in actuality, that's going to be about 1.5, a little over 1.5 million, because Nancy's obviously talked about some cash that's already been accumulated to that particular project. So it's going to be $1.5 million plus, let's say that might. The point that you're trying to get to then is, I know that the city has a partner on that particular, it's the city's obligation to pay that debt back on the 1.5 million, but they have a partner involved in that project that is going to provide some assistance to the payback. So I think taking on $1.5 million for the debt and paying down $1 million for the debt on a combination of lowering the interest expense, I mean, you're paying off 5% debt, you're issuing 3% debt is, simple numbers. And the fact that you have a partner involved on that particular part of the project, I think you're going to see a negligible increase to the overall debt service payments that may be due.
Yeah, that's kind of the picture I was seeing, that,
Yes,
that
yeah.
we're taking on more debt, and if that's all we were doing, I guess people could wring their hands and say, oh, the city's getting further in debt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're paying off debt. About 2/3 as much we're paying off debt, and we're lowering the interest rate. Plus, we're bringing in a partner who's helping us pay the new debt we're bringing on. Because if my brother wanted to help me pay for my new car, well, that would be all just fine. The total combination of those three tells me that we're moving along and not getting any further in debt.
I think that's reasonably an accurate statement to this regard, specifically to this particular juncture. The other point I'd add to the narrative would be one piece of the puzzle that's not included in this is the city on an annual basis is always paying down debt in their normal debt service payments, and what you don't see is as that debt gets paid off on an annual basis, again, for additional projects that come on in a growing community, you have additional projects that are necessary to do. You put debt on kind of to an equal standpoint as well. So the city is always trying to manage its outstanding debt just from an eyeball standpoint to its ability to do so and not increase tax levies and things of that regard.
Okay, so in my household, if I was buying a new
Right.
car and paying off credit cards, what I'd really be worried about is, well, the month-to-month payment.
Yeah, but
And how much of my money I gotta pay out. Does this have any impact on how much taxpayer money we have to pay out then?
in this particular instance, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know the ballpark numbers would tell me that in taking on $1.5 million worth of debt and paying off $1 million, on the face, we're taking on $500,000 more worth of debt. But the fact that you're paying off higher rate debt and the fact that you have a partner on this other particular project, to the net benefit to the taxpayer, I think it's negligible to the increase of the actual debt service payment.
Okay,
Exchange.
I think the finance director had told me earlier, and maybe I got this wrong, that actually lessens the amount of tax money.
It should,
That we pay
ultimately,
out?
it ultimately. I mean, you have a responsibility to still pay the debt, but the reality is the actual tax dollars that'll be utilized, I think, will be, yes.
Sounds like good financial work. Thank you very much.
Especially by your finance director.
Yeah. Somebody a whole lot smarter than me does a good job on this, and I like the results, so thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Appreciate your
Okay,
partnership,
thank you very
Bruce.
much.
Any other council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item E1, ordinance 1815, an ordinance to amend the 2017-2018 fiscal budget. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Anybody neutral? Close the public hearing. Item E2, ordinance 1816, an ordinance to approve the 2018-2019 fiscal budget. Again, a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any proponents? Any opponents? Anybody neutral? Close the public hearing. Votes on those will be at the next council meeting. Item F1, resolution. The next four items are all related. Item F1, resolution R180015, a resolution to approve a construction agreement with Nebraska Family Health System, LLC, which provides that the city shall design, construct, and install an extension of Pinnacle Drive from Cornhusker Road to American Parkway and related public improvements within the Papillion Business and Technology Park. Is there a motion to approve resolution R180015? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilwoman Klug. Any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Mr. Stubbe.
Yeah, so I'm just going to, obviously I'm going to support this one and the other three, but I just kind of want to go to the point that Mr. Mumgard made about here's an opportunity for the city of Papillion to be drawing in some professional jobs, which I assume will be high-paying jobs. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that this is somebody that's new to this particular area. So what policies do we have in place that essentially allow this particular business to come to the city of Papillion? And I think part of it just comes down to the fact that we have a atmosphere here in Papillion that we're conducive to accepting these types of businesses, working closely with them to make sure that they're successful, which obviously then will make the city of Papillion successful.
Mr. Mumgard.
I will add to that, Mr. Stubbe, because I will point out that not only are you 100% correct, that this is the kind of non-retail job that I think is a big plus for Papillion. It's coming in because we own the land, because a mayor and city council 20 some odd years ago decided to buy that land, and smart mayors and smart city council members over that time period didn't waste it. We had opportunities to sell that corner to gas stations and all sorts of other kinds of businesses, and we didn't do it. We kept that land, and now we have something that hopefully will, in the future, be just a great, people will take it for granted. That this is where they go and, get their medical care, and this is where professionals come into the city every day, go to work, and this is where people who live in the city go to work every day. It just gets taken for granted. And I'd say, no, it doesn't come about that way. It's the result of 20 some odd years of very good planning. And Mr. Engberg has lit up his light because he wants to take credit for it too, which he should. He was there at the beginning. So, if you're looking for policies that kind of add to this kind of thing, I'd say that's a kind of policy that you could look at.
Mr. Engberg.
Well, I don't want to disappoint you. I'm not looking for credit. But I did want to point out what Mr. Rainbolt mentioned during his conversation applies to this. When he said they primarily want to develop sites that are available. Back then, when we considered buying that land, that was the key reason for it, because there were no sites. There were people looking around Sarpy County, Papillion in particular, that wanted to put business-type operations in, such as this one, and there were no sites available. And no one wanted to invest to do sites like this. And so that's how it was created. So it relates back 20-odd years ago to today. It comes down to having sites. And that's something I think we always got to keep in mind, especially as we work through the comprehensive plan, redoing the comprehensive plan. That's important to have availability.
I think the other important thing on this specific resolution is it's putting a road in, and that road's going by some additional land. And so while we're putting the road in to enable the specific project we're talking about, it actually opens up 2 additional lots to where they're development ready, literally just pull a permit and they can start building. So back to your point about having developable land for the right kind of jobs, it's actually even enable more, so kind of a compounding effect. Any other council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Related item F2, Resolution R18-0016, a resolution to approve an option agreement with Family Emergency Rooms LLC, which provides that the city shall grant Family Emergency Rooms LLC an option to purchase all or a portion of Lot 10, Papillion Business and Technology Park. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R18-0016? Motion by Councilman Gaines. Second by Councilman Engberg. Any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Also related item F3, Resolution R18-0017, a resolution to approve a buyback agreement with the Nebraska Family Health Systems LLC and Family Emergency Rooms LLC, which would allow the city to repurchase under certain conditions certain property located in the Papillion Business and Technology Park that is proposed to be purchased from the city. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R18-0017? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilman Klug. Any proponents? Opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. And also related, item F4, Resolution R180127, a resolution to approve a temporary access easement agreement which provides that the city shall grant a temporary access easement to Nebraska Family Health Systems LLC, NFHS, for the purpose of providing NFHS ingress and egress rights to and from Lot 9, Papillion Business and Technology Park, across a specific portion of American Parkway right-of-way, as well as specific portions of Lots 10 and 11, Papillion Business and Technology Park. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R180127? Motion by Councilman Glover. Second by Councilman Florence. Do we have any proponents? Opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Want to recognize Brian Hartman's with us. He is our real estate agent on the transaction. Brian, thank you for everything you've done on this one. Item F5, bring us more transactions to the technology park. Bring us more jobs and more transactions.
I was just kind of reviewing my notes, and the amount of the jobs and the pay that they're going to be bringing in is actually quite substantial. Like 25 full-time positions at average of $130,000.
Appreciate it. Item F5, Resolution R180153, a resolution to approve an extension of the West Papillion Catholic Community Preliminary Plat. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R180153? Motion by Councilman Ingberg. Second by Councilman Stube. Do we have any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F6, Resolution R180156, a resolution to call $955,000 of general obligation and refunding bond series 2011, originally issued by SID 217. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R180156? Motion by Councilman Klug. Second by Councilman Gaines. Do we have any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Mr. Mumgard, thanks for the conversation on the interplay of those two, because it's unusual for municipalities and cities to call debt and pay it off early, so thanks for the education on that. I don't believe any committees have met. A reminder that the FNA does meet on the 18th and the audit meets on the 4th. With that, do we have any comments from the floor? We got students here. You guys got to come up and introduce yourself. You got to come up to the podium and let us know who you are and what brings you here. And we'll sit and wait. Go ahead and come on up. You can go ahead and line up.
Use the mic or hello, my name's Zane. My AP class is making me come to a public meeting and observe it, so I'm here today to do that.
Thank you. Scouts, come up too and introduce yourselves.
Okay, hi, we are also from Papillion La Vista South. And so I'm Chloe, and this is Callie, and this is Izzy, and we're just here to kind of, for our AP Gov class, we're just kind of here to see what you guys do, so that way we can learn more about our community, and just what you guys do for us and everybody else in Papillion.
Thank you.
My name is Braden Weiss. I'm coming from Troop 463, trying to get my citizenship and the community badge. Just trying to make Eagle as fast as I can.
And 463 is where? Who's the organization that charters you? Where do you meet?
Where do we meet? I don't know the church, but
Thanks.
it's yeah, it's somewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Evan Dickhorn. I'm from Troop 461. I'm here for a citizenship in the community requirement.
I'm Ian Sutton. I'm also from Troop 461, here trying to work on my citizenship of the community.
Thank you. Any council comments? Just a couple of things from the last couple of weeks. Ms. Myers and I did attend a United Cities meeting. There's some interim hearings that the legislature is starting to hold. One that we'll probably participate in, Mr. Sturzman's already been involved in some meetings, is around SIDs and SID legislation. I don't think the legislature understands that tool. And so there's some hearings around that, and we're going to take an active role in trying to educate and make sure that they understand the role that SIDs play in development. I would say if there's any items of interest that you guys have with the legislature, now would be a really good time to bringing those forward, because session will start in late December, early January. So if there's legislation to be proposed, now would be about the time to start working on that. So let us know if you have anything of interest there. A number of us met with a professor or doctor from UNL in regards to sound mitigation, just looking at venues, whether it's Sumter Amphitheater, entertainment venues, ballparks, learning best practices literally around the globe of measuring sound and impacts of sound and different type of sound and what that might mean from a policy perspective. A really interesting session, and I would anticipate maybe we'll even bring some ideas forth that we could implement to help out there. If you're interested in that, let us know, but it's really informative. So Lori, thank you especially to Doug Huggins for arranging that. We got some great resources down at UNL that understand this at a global level. We also had a number of interviews. If people remember, Allie is leaving us. Her husband's being transferred to Korea. So we started the interviews for the executive assistant, and I believe an offer was extended, and so we're just waiting for that to be finalized. And so hopefully we'll have an acceptance of that and an announcement of who that was. Some impressive candidates. Mr. Sturzman, Mr. Gowan, Mr. Thompson, and I also met with some scouts this afternoon. He's working on some environmental sustainability, so we talked about that from a lot of different perspectives. We had a meeting with Metro Community College. As people know, they've got a quarter section of ground at Highway 50 and 370 for a future site, and they're always doing their strategic planning, so we were just having a good long-term conversation of partnerships, what growth is happening, what are needs down here, and what programming might Metro bring down. I'm expecting sooner than later they'll be making some announcements of what they plan to do there, so we got a really good relationship with Metro. We also had a meeting between Papillion and La Vista from a fire perspective. Mr. Bose brought it forward, a program called Pulse Point. It's a pretty innovative program where if somebody calls 911 for they're having a heart attack, and 911 dispatcher is dispatching EMS, and it's a heart attack issue. There's actually an app that residents can carry if they're CPR certified, and they'll get the message on their phone at the same time it's going to EMS to respond, because they're finding a lot of times that the person that's having a heart attack, there's a CPR certified person nearby. That person can go start CPR before the squad even shows up, and there's a number of examples of saves that have occurred. Lincoln's implemented, and I think they've had 2 saves already. Papillion and La Vista are working to see if we can raise that priority with the 911 centers and get that program implemented. So stay tuned for more information there. And CHI is a leader behind that, along with UNMC coming to the table to help us with that. So Chief, thanks for bringing that to us. Just a couple of other reminders for the calendar. Tomorrow morning, if you're not aware, Thursday morning, Chambers Economic Development session is at 7 a.m. at Trinity. If you want to attend that, let Allie know and she can get you registered. And then Sunday, September 9th, PVFD Inc. is having a salute to public safety at Hy-Vee. It's a ceremony they have at about 7:30, kind of in line with the 9/11 ceremony, so come out and support that. Mentioned the league conference on the 19th if you want to go to that. And then last is in about an hour and 15 minutes at 9 o'clock. If people are not aware, HGTV was in Papillion filming this summer, the program House Hunters. There was a Papillion realtor and a Papillion family that got onto that program, and so their entire program at 9 to 9:30 tonight is Papillion. 2 of the houses they were looking at was in Papillion, and 1 was in Benson, so we'll see kind of who wins the shootout. But we're actually partnering with the family, and we opened up Sumter Amphitheater, and we're showing HGTV House Hunters live at Sumter Amphitheater at 9 o'clock, so come out and watch TV at the amphitheater, and that'll be an interesting program, and we'll see if Papillion wins. So, Lori, again, a little bit of work from Doug on that partnership to make that happen, but it's a great thing for Papillion to get some more national level exposure. So come out and join us at 9 o'clock. Any other council comments? Ms. Klug.
If I may, we had the pleasure of having a couple troops here tonight, and I just would like to point out Scoutmaster Dickamore did not come up and introduce himself. I'm going to point him out just a little bit, but that Scoutmaster and several others have done things in the last year that have kind of been like above and beyond. And this particular Scoutmaster I know has gone above and beyond in that he had taken special classes and done extra things so that some of the boys that go to his troop could attend simply because of either whether it's a medical, a foster care, a child protection. He attended some of those extra classes. That's just one of those above and beyond things that people are doing in Scouts and other organizations that I think need to be recognized. So not only has Scoutmaster Dickamore done it, but there's several others in our area. And I just want to point out that there's an awful lot of good people doing amazing things.
Thank you, sir. We also have a closed session tonight. So with that, is there a motion to go into closed session to protect the public interest to discuss labor negotiations? Motion by Councilman Gaines, second by Councilman Glover. Do we have any proponents? Any opponents? Any council discussion? If not, please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
And just before we go in and I make the next comment, it's just more for the students. Almost everything in government's got to be out in the public so people can see what we're doing and take public votes and public discussion. There's only about 3 times that we can go behind closed doors and have discussion where people can't see what we're talking about. One of those, and it generally is around negotiations. So if you're negotiating on a land purchase, negotiating a contract, negotiating any different way, obviously you don't want the other party to know what you're thinking about in your strategy. So law does allow us to go behind closed doors, talk about strategy, and give some guidance for the negotiation. But there are no votes taken behind closed doors. Any votes and actions that would be taken, we're back out here in a formal discussion. And then the only other time is if we have a personnel action, and if the discussion would harm that other individual. Obviously we don't want to harm individuals, so we can go behind closed doors, talk about the personnel action, and then come out and take public action. So just a little bit of education. With that, I will state for the record the purpose of the closed session is only to discuss labor negotiations. The closed session will include the following: the mayor, the city council, city administrator, assistant city administrator, city attorney, city clerk, and the human resources manager.